If you or someone in your family is over 70 and still driving, what I'm about to tell you could decide whether they keep their car keys this year or lose them without ever seeing it coming. Stick with me for the next few minutes because rule number 4 is the one almost nobody sees coming, and by the time they find out, it's already too late to prepare for it. Before we get into it, if you care about your parents, your grandparents, or your own independence behind the wheel, hit that subscribe button right now because we cover exactly this kind of thing every single week. The real changes that quietly affect older Americans while nobody's paying attention. Okay, let's get into it. There's something most people don't think about until it happens to someone they love. One day, your dad is driving to church like he's done every Sunday for 40 years. The next day, a letter shows up in the mail, and suddenly he's being told he has to prove, on paper, that he's still allowed to do the thing he's done his whole adult life. That moment hits different. It's not just about a car. It's about independence. It's about dignity. It's about a person who raised you, worked for decades, built a life, suddenly being told by a government office that they need to justify their right to drive to the grocery store. That's the emotional weight behind everything we're talking about today, because these rules aren't just paperwork, they're personal. Across the country, states have been quietly tightening the rules for older drivers, and 2026 is shaping up to be one of the years where a lot of these changes actually take effect or get enforced more strictly. Now, I want to be straight with you here. There is no single new federal law that suddenly applies to every senior driver in America. What's actually happening is more scattered and honestly more confusing, because different states are rolling out different versions of the same idea, tightening how older drivers renew their licenses, how often they get tested, and what proof they need to provide. If you're watching this from Florida, Illinois, California, or anywhere else, the specific rule that hits you might look a little different, but the pattern across the country is the same, and that pattern is what we're breaking down today. Let's start with the first one, because it's the one catching the most people off guard right now. Shorter renewal cycles for older drivers. In a lot of states, once you cross a certain age, your license doesn't renew for 8 years anymore. It doesn't even renew for 4 years. In some places, it's down to 2 years, and in a growing number of states, it's now every single year once you hit a certain age threshold. Think about what that actually means for a moment. Imagine you're 74 years old. You've been driving safely your whole life. No accidents, no tickets, nothing. But now, instead of renewing your license once almost a decade, you're standing in line at the DMV every 12 months. Filling out forms, sometimes retaking vision tests, sometimes waiting hours in a crowded office that wasn't built with elderly visitors in mind. For someone with mobility issues, someone who doesn't drive well in unfamiliar places, someone who gets anxious in bureaucratic settings, that yearly trip becomes a genuine source of stress. It's not just an inconvenience. For a lot of seniors, it feels like being put on probation for the crime of getting older. The second rule that's spreading is mandatory vision and cognitive screening at renewal, and this one is emotional in a different way. Nobody wants to think about the day their eyesight isn't sharp enough, or their reaction time isn't what it used to be. But more states are now requiring in-person vision tests instead of allowing online renewal past a certain age, and some are adding basic cognitive screening questions into the process. Here's the thing about this one. On paper, it sounds reasonable. Nobody wants an unsafe driver on the road, including the seniors themselves. Most older drivers actually self-regulate. They stop driving at night, they avoid highways, they plan routes around busy times. But the emotional side of this rule is what people don't talk about enough. Imagine sitting in that testing chair, waiting to hear whether the machine says you pass or fail, knowing that if you fail, you might lose the one thing that lets you visit your grandkids, get to your doctor's appointments, go to church, buy your own groceries, without asking anyone for a ride. That test isn't just a vision check. For a lot of people, it feels like a referendum on their entire independence. The third rule showing up more and more is restricted licensing, sometimes called a graduated license for seniors. And this one is honestly the one that stings the most for a lot of families, because it doesn't take the license away completely, it just chips away at it piece by piece. Daylight-only driving, no highway driving, no driving during rush hour. Some states are even experimenting with geographic restrictions, meaning a senior driver can only legally drive within a certain radius of their home. Think about what that does to someone's life. Maybe their favorite doctor is 45 minutes away and involves highway driving. Maybe their grandkids live in the next county over, and getting there now means either breaking the restriction or asking someone else to drive them. It's a slow erosion, not a sudden stop. And in some ways, that's harder to deal with emotionally because it happens one small cut at a time. You don't lose your independence all at once. You lose it in pieces, and each piece stings a little more than the last. Now here's rule number 4, and this is the one that catches almost everyone off guard. The one most people over 70 don't even know is coming until they're standing at the counter being told they can't renew their license today. It's the requirement for a medical certification form from a doctor, sometimes called a medical clearance or a physician's statement, before a license renewal will even be processed. In a growing number of states, once you hit a certain age, you can't just walk in and renew your license anymore. You need a form, signed and dated by your doctor, sometimes within a specific window like the last 90 days, confirming that you're medically fit to drive. That means a whole extra step nobody warns you about. You have to schedule a doctor's appointment. You have to explain to your doctor why you need this. Your doctor has to actually agree to sign it, and doctors aren't always quick to sign these things, because if something goes wrong down the road, that signature can come back to them too. So now you've got seniors who show up to renew their license, thinking it's routine, the same thing they've done for 50 years, and they get turned away at the counter because they don't have this piece of paper. They have to leave, book a doctor's appointment, sometimes wait weeks for the appointment itself, and come back a second time, sometimes a third time if the doctor wants more information first. For someone who relies on their car every single day, that gap between appointments isn't just annoying, it can mean weeks without being able to legally drive at all. And here's the part that really gets people. Some doctors, especially ones who are cautious or don't know the patient that well, will simply refuse to sign the form, not because the person is unsafe, but because the doctor doesn't want the liability. That means someone who has driven safely their entire life can suddenly lose their license, not because of anything they did wrong, but because of one doctor's hesitation on a form. That's the rule almost nobody sees coming, and it's the one causing the most heartbreak in DMV offices across the country right now. And that brings us to the fifth rule, which is less about testing and more about access itself, the phasing out of online and mail-in renewal for older drivers. For years, plenty of states let you renew your license from home if you met certain conditions. No tickets, no major changes, a clean record. That convenience mattered a lot for older drivers, especially ones who live in rural areas or who have mobility issues that make standing in a DMV line physically difficult. But more and more states are now requiring in-person renewal once you cross a certain age. No exceptions, no online option, no mail-in form. That might sound like a small thing if you're young and healthy, but picture it from the other side. Picture someone in their 80s, maybe using a cane, maybe recovering from a hip surgery, who now has to arrange a ride, sometimes a 2-hour round trip, just to stand in line at a government office for something that used to take 5 minutes online. For a lot of families, that means an adult child taking time off work or an elderly parent having to ask a neighbor for a favor just to keep their license valid. It adds friction to a process that used to be simple, and friction, when you're older and your options are already limited, can feel like a wall. So why is all of this happening now, in 2026 specifically? A few things are colliding at once. States are dealing with an aging population that's larger than it's ever been. The baby boomer generation is now firmly in their 70s and 80s, and that means way more senior drivers on the road than at any point in American history. At the same time, insurance companies and safety advocacy groups have been pushing state governments for years to tighten oversight on older drivers, citing statistics about reaction time, medication interactions, and vision decline. And states, many of which are also dealing with tight budgets and short-staffed DMV offices, are trying to balance public safety concerns with the practical reality that millions of seniors depend on driving to live independent lives. The result is this patchwork of new rules rolling out state by state, some strict, some mild, none of them perfectly coordinated, which is exactly why so many families are caught off guard. Nobody sends out a big national announcement. It just shows up quietly in a renewal notice, or worse, at the counter when it's already too late to prepare. Here's what really matters in all of this, and it's something I want you to sit with for a second. Driving, for a lot of older Americans, isn't just a convenience, it's dignity. It's the ability to decide for yourself when you leave the house and where you go. It's not having to ask your kids for a ride to the pharmacy. It's being able to show up to your grandchild's birthday party without depending on someone else's schedule. When that ability gets restricted, even with the best safety intentions in the world, it touches something deeper than transportation. It touches identity. A lot of seniors describe losing their license as one of the hardest moments of getting older. Harder in some ways than other milestones, because it feels like the world quietly deciding you're not capable anymore, even if that's not what anyone intended to say. So what can you actually do about this, whether it's for yourself or for a parent or grandparent you're worried about? First, don't wait for the renewal letter to show up before you find out what your state requires. Every state's DMV website has an aging driver or senior driver section, and it takes 10 minutes to check what your specific state requires at your specific age. Second, if a medical certification form is required where you live, don't wait until the last minute to get it signed. Bring it up with the doctor well before the renewal deadline, so there's time to handle it if the doctor wants to run any additional checks first. Third, if vision or cognitive testing is part of the process, there's no shame in practicing beforehand, getting your eyes checked independently, making sure your prescription is current, so you're not caught off guard by the in-person test. And fourth, if you're helping a parent through this, be patient with them. This isn't just an errand to check off a list for them. It's often deeply tied to their sense of self. A little extra patience and a little extra help with the paperwork goes a long way toward making a stressful process feel a little less like a loss and a little more like just another form to fill out. At the end of the day, these rules exist because states are trying to balance two things that don't always fit together easily: keeping roads safe for everyone and respecting the independence of people who've been driving responsibly for decades. Reasonable people can disagree about where exactly that balance should sit, and it's worth remembering that plenty of seniors are safer, more cautious drivers than people half their age. But whether you agree with these new rules or not, the reality is they're spreading state by state, and the families who prepare ahead of time are the ones who avoid the surprise letters, the wasted DMV trips, and the stressful last-minute scramble for a doctor's signature. If this video helped you understand what's coming, or if it made you think about a parent or grandparent who needs to hear this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one, because we're going to keep tracking these changes as they roll out state by state throughout the year. And if you know someone this applies to, someone who might not have heard about rule number 4 yet, send this video their way, because the worst way to find out about these changes is standing at the DMV counter with nowhere else to turn. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.